62 days of occupation. Maybe it's impossible to describe it in one word, but something that you'll remember forever. Well, I'll start with the second part of your question. I can describe it in one word. Hell. This is hell. Hell of Mariupol. Now about the beginning of all this. On the 24th of February, we woke up as usually. Of course, the situation there was such that we were already waiting for something to happen. Because we saw what's going on worldwide, we saw how Mr. Putin tries to frighten us. And on the 24th of February, I would wake up at 6:30 as usually. I usually wake up early. I reached my tablet as usually, opened the news, and of course the first thing I saw was what we all saw. That bastard, excuse me for this word, but it declared that so-called military operation to denazify us, to demilitarize us, and whatever he said. All these words could be brought into one. Putin declared against Ukraine, against Ukrainian people, not only Ukrainian people, but against the whole world, we can say, declared the real world. I cannot name it in any other way. Look, clearly it was a shock. I hope that it would not get to that point, because the whole world, well, not the whole world, but civilized part of the world was saying we support Ukraine, and if Putin crosses the red line, we will respond adequately. And for that reason, to be honest, I did not think that he would get as far as crossing that red line. But he did it. He crossed it. And unfortunately, the first reaction on the global scale was not what we expected. There was no strict, adequate response. And during the first day, Ukraine remained pretty much alone against a cruel enemy. Although in Mariupol itself, there was no really active combat action as yet, but we were watching the news. I was with my computer all the time. Every minute I would monitor the news, and we saw that they entered Kharkiv. They are at the outskirts of Kyiv. I have my daughter in Kyiv. We saw when the first missile hit a multiple-story building in Kyiv. It was terrible. Indeed, it was terrible. I would never think that Putin would do it, but he did it. And then it became even worse. As early as on the 3rd of March, we in Mariupol, in our district where I was residing, living there, the keyword in the past tense, I lived there because my home doesn't exist anymore. The apartment where my mother-in-law, who is 90 years old, was living, doesn't exist anymore. So I am saying it in the past tense. I lived there. I lived in central part near the drama theater and not far from Azovstal steel factory. It's just located in such a way that central district in Mariupol is very close to Azovstal steel factory. So on the 3rd of March, about 5 p.m., I don't remember for sure, but the curfew did not start as yet. We were at home with my wife, and we heard terrible sound of artillery shelling. Sorry if I make some mistakes in Ukrainian, because for the whole of my life I mostly spoke Russian. Most part of my 57 years I spoke Russian. I was born in Mariupol. I'll try and speak Ukrainian, but I apologize for any mistake. Thank you. You speak great Ukrainian. So we heard that sound, that whistling of that ordnance. You know, it whistles and then there's an explosion. Whistle, explosion, whistle, explosion. And then windows got broken in our building. Glass was broken. We were feeling terrible. We started hiding in the corridor, and our windows were to the eastern part, and the shelling was from the west. So we were feeling more or less safe to some extent. Safe, yeah, to some extent. But still, when you hear that sound of that artillery shelling, and you know, it explodes nearby, and there were buildings nearby, and they were hit by those projectiles. And you sit in the corridor and you hear that projectile flying, and you think, wouldn't it hit your apartment? Just 1 second, and that's it, and your life may come to the end. I had already been under shelling once, when in 2015 I went to the eastern part immediately after shelling. In about 2 hours I was taking pictures there, and then there was another shelling by Grad MLRS, multiple launch rocket systems. But at that time those Grad projectiles didn't reach the city a bit. But I heard those explosions of real Grad somewhere not far from myself. But my wife heard it for the first time, those explosions and that whistle, that noise of artillery shelling, and she was really scared. Then shelling ended. It was 15 or 20, I don't know, was it missiles or artillery ordnance of high caliber or my wife did not want me to leave home, but I left. I went outside to see what happened, and I saw that houses are on fire, something like 50 meters from our building, from our house. People tried to switch the gas, natural gas, off because it would explode and the whole building could explode. They switched it off. What did I do? My mother-in-law and her husband and niece were living there, so I ran there to tell them that, yeah, we have been shelled, but we are alive, for them to know, for them not to worry about us. Then I went upstairs to the 9th floor, and from there I hardly managed to call my daughter in Kyiv to tell her that, yes, we are alive. We have been shelled, but we are alive. Those were probably the last days, very last days, when we had at least some connection to Kyiv, to my daughter. Then it disappeared. By the way, on the 3rd of March, I think the electricity was not there already and water supply was not there. But then, if I remember it correctly, then on the 5th or maybe 6th of March, we were in the kitchen, sitting in the kitchen, just making some fried bread to save it. So we were frying it in the oven, drying it in the oven, and we saw, you know, we had a kettle on the on that gas, and we saw that there is something strange. There are some sounds, and then it stops. So we have got natural gas supply cut off. And that moment for me was like, what will happen now? How will we live? No electricity, no gas, no water. Food, well, we had some food when that so-called military operation was announced. We went to the food store and we didn't buy big bags of everything. We just got a couple packs of pasta, something else. You know, that day I was hoping that everything would finish very soon, that our country will win, that the world will help us, and everything will finish very quickly, and very well. It will be very good result for us and very bad for Putin. But my hopes were in vain. Even when did you understand that you have to leave? I can tell you immediately that to leave the city, I didn't think about it first. Basically for the same reason I mentioned. Yes, it was difficult. In March it was difficult. Initially it was still possible to leave, but I still hoped that Mariupol will remain Ukrainian, that it will not surrender, that it's reliably defended. I saw those fortifications around Mariupol. I knew that Mariupol is being defended reliably. Yes, it was defended reliably, and as I said, we did hope that everything will go well for us. We just have to wait. And guys from the military whom we saw said everything will be okay, help will come and everything will be okay. But there was a big problem in Mariupol. The problem is also a big problem for the whole Ukraine. But, for example, in Kyiv, in Kharkiv, in Zaporizhia, there are at least some air defense systems. Maybe, well, even though the sky is not closed 100%, but missiles are down, airplanes are down. But in Mariupol, there was no air defense. In Mariupol, sky was completely open. So when Russian airplanes started flying above Mariupol, when they started launching missiles all around, nobody was able to stop them. When missiles were coming, hitting houses, hitting Azovstal steel factory, nobody would stop them. They were feeling like home. I already said that our grandma resided right next to Azovstal steel factory. From her courtyard, we saw everything going there. We saw an airplane taking its position, launching missiles, one missile, another missile. They launched them in pairs. We saw how that missile hit the factory and explodes. Once, I don't know what they launched back then, but you know, when I was a schoolboy, we learned about that nuclear explosion. There was this there was this small of smoke and then a big cloud on top of it. But it looked like that nuclear explosion. I don't know what they launched, what they dropped there. And it continued day and night. They dropped so much onto Azovstal, but probably there was very strong metal in Azovstal steel factory. There was thick armor, thick armor, and guys are still holding the line. There are even people I know, some people I know are there. I don't know what can be done to take them out of there. Yevhen, please tell us, how did you learn that Russians dropped bomb onto drama theater and the maternity ward? Well, drama theater, about 20 minutes before that bombing, we were there. We have an architectural monument, a tower in Mariupol, and back then that was almost the only location in the city where it was still possible to have a mobile connection. And we went there to try to call our daughter, and then we went home. Back then, next to the drama theater, there was water distributed, there was a tank with water, and there was a filled kitchen trailer. And when we were closer to home, we heard a terrible explosion and we saw black smoke. Back then we didn't know that it was a drama theater, but later we learned about it. And I know that there were about 1,000 refugees from Sartana district, from left bank, from eastern district. And in front of that drama theater, not the main entrance, but that working entrance, so there was that square, that fountain, and there were big letters on those tiles saying "Dite," children. Big white letters, but it did not stop the enemy. It did not stop them. They did drop those bombs. Then they dropped a bomb not far from drama theater onto one of the best Mariupol schools, school number 66. It is located maybe 20 meters from my home. There on the photos you can see there is even a plate there, school, secondary school number 66. That's probably an important strategic military site. You know, as they always say in the news, we kept listening to radio from so-called Donetsk People's Republic, we were listening to Russian news, we were listening to Soloviev Live, and only closer at the end, at the very end, we managed to use an old radio to get some Ukrainian station. And there the Russians kept saying, we only make high precision strikes, we only destroy military installations. I don't know how much percentage of Mariupol turned out to be like military installations, military sites, because the center of the city where I lived has been destroyed almost completely. Yes, in western districts, at the entry to the city where we spent about 1 week when we were living, we thought that everything has been destroyed there too, because everything started from there. But when we came there, we saw that no, there is some sort of different life there. Different world. There is even some street market there, and old people are sitting there playing domino. Some buildings are broken or are burned, but it's not like it was in center. It turned out that we were in the ground zero of that combat action in our district. And I think on the 15th, yes, on the 15th of March, by the way, every day with my wife, we would go from our apartment building to the district of smaller private houses where we have our grandma, because he was lying down and she needed help every day. I would make a fire, my wife would cook something, we would help our grandma, because he just cannot walk. Before the war, before the invasion, she was able to move around her house. Now she doesn't move at all. She's laying down. So on the 15th of March we were there, and yet another shelling started. I think they tried to shell Azovstal, and maybe not only Azovstal, maybe indeed they were trying to hit those private houses. But anyway, whatever would not reach Azovstal would fall onto those buildings, onto those houses. And when that shelling started, explosions became close to us. There was a projectile, an artillery shell, behind the fence at our buildings, at our neighbor's courtyard. I ran and asked, is my wife here? No, she's not here. I went outdoors. I see that there are projectiles flying and exploding 20-30 meters in front of you. I didn't even manage to leave the room. There is a room, and there is a big big veranda. There was a veranda, keyword there was. I just go to that veranda, and about a meter and a half in front of me there was some artillery shell, some projectile. There is an explosion, it becomes dark, I don't see anything, I don't hear anything, and I'm covered with some rubble. At that moment I thought that's the end. That's it, I thought. This is my very last moment, I thought, but I was mistaken. Luckily, I was mistaken. I tried to move my hands. Yeah, I thought that I can move my hands, my legs. I tried I tried to remove those stones I was covered with on that veranda. I saw some light in some small hole. I continued to remove, and I got out of the trouble, and there was some sort of yellow fog around. There was a book by Volkov, I think, Yellow Fog. So there I saw that yellow fog. I could not hear anything. There was some bad smell there. I don't know what was that smell about, but I went out of there and I started walking. I don't know where. We just went directly, there was some sort of burn in front of me, and now I realized that I have to turn left because there was a house and my brother's family there. Yes, they were luckily there, and on that street there was no shelling. I thought they were whispering, but they say we were shouting loud that you are alive because they thought that I died, and I could not hear it. I thought it's somebody whispering or saying something from a long distance, like alive, alive. You know, I cannot hear well even now because I get I get concussion, contusion, and you know, I was not even scared. I didn't any scare even. You know, so I stayed alive. But those were just the beginnings, as it turned out. Because in almost 2 days, when we were again going to visit our grandma with my wife, somebody knocked at the door. We opened the door, and there was our niece with 2 children. A boy, 8 years old, and a daughter, and a girl, her daughter, 15 years old. They're covered with dust and blood. And they say, we have been shelled and we have been wounded. Our father, I mean my wife's brother, was also wounded and he was not able to walk. He just somehow creeped into the room because he had his legs cut. There was a terrible shelling, and she was a heroic mother because she saved her 2 children. She didn't even know that she has got 2 wounds in her legs, and from one of those there was almost a fountain of blood. When we started taking her clothes from there, all her trousers were wet, were in blood. When we saw her wounds, we were shocked. We are not medics. We are just usual lay people like you. When we get a scar on our finger, you know, not everybody would be able to see that blood there, but on her arm, like below the elbow, she just got a piece of it cut. That boy, 8 years old, on his back, he also didn't have skin, you know, on the piece of tissue cut from there. As my wife said, you could learn anatomy from here. A girl had her head broken, and their mother had 2 holes, as I already said, on her leg, and from one of those holes there was a fountain of blood. I ran outdoors. There were some Ukrainian military in our courtyard. Not a lot of them, but still somebody there. I asked them, do you have any connection to Red Cross or some medics or somebody, because I have those children and my wife wounded. And they said, sorry, but we cannot help with anything. He just gave me some painkillers and some bandage. And with my wife, we remained with those 2 wounded children and their mother. But thanks to our neighbors, they brought some peroxide and some piece of gauze. so we managed to handle those wounds. I didn't tell you that when they were still at home before they reached out, their neighbor also provided them with first aid, with peroxide and stuff, so they saved them. Yeah, maybe their neighbor saved them. That's how we made our first dressing, and they stayed with us, but not for a long time. We would make dressing every day. Especially the boy was crying in the night. It was very painful for him because he had a big wound. He was not able to move in the night time. He was only able to lay in one position. So, of course, his body was swelling, and he said, "May stand up and walk a bit, back and forth," and then he would lay down after a while, and it continues. You know, I was, when making the dressing, making the bandage for him, I was singing all children's songs I knew when we were removing that bandage and processing his wound. But still, you know, I believe he's a heroic boy, because what he lived through, not every adult would be able to go through. He's a hero, just a little man. He's great. Well, speaking about that boy, you know, the whole world has seen your photos, that Mariupol diary you placed on your social media. We have all seen the diary of that boy. Is it that boy? Yes, that boy. Yes, we are talking about that boy who wrote the diary. It was his own initiative. We did not even know that he was writing it. But at some point his mother found it just by chance and showed it to us. When she saw that diary, she started crying. She brought it to us, and it was difficult even for my wife. You know, I had to be patient, but it was very difficult for me when I was reading those short lines written by a child. Short lines which showed, I think, much more, which expressed much more than some thick books about war. In those several pages, the boy managed to tell almost the whole story, what was happening to him back then. Well, he said that his two dogs were killed, and his grandma, if you read those pages, you have them on the screen. Yeah, they're on the screen. And there is one picture there, two dogs with wings and two humans with wings. You see those two dogs, and here he writes, yes, my two dogs died, my grandmother Hala died, and my Mariupol has died. And the second person with wings is his grandfather. But the most terrible thing he wrote was, Mariupol has died. For him, Mariupol has died. So you see, there are even those details, like those angels, those dogs, you know, those were two dogs living in their courtyard. They were living in the courtyard as usual. One of them died in the room, and luckily they were not in that room. People were not in that room when there was shelling, because the whole room was damaged with shrapnel, and luckily people were not there. And I found the second dog later when I was going through that rubble around the barn, around the shed. I didn't know where the dog is. That Granny Hala is not his grandmother, but the neighbor. Granny died of natural reasons, but war accelerated it. What's the fate of that boy? Well, his fate is, at the moment, he's still in Mariupol. And we make every effort to try and get him out of there. It's not that simple and easy. Even if you find money, not every driver would agree to bring people from Mariupol. For us, it was also not easy. We tried 3 times in a convoy when Irina Vereshchuk announced that come to Port City and there will be buses and we will be brought out of there. We went there 3 times. We spent time under rain, under cold wind, with Granny. We spent the whole day there, but every time we came back without any result. And then we decided to find a driver who would bring us. And yes, we paid money. And again, it was not the very first time. We just managed to get to Tokmak first, and then there were different people taking us from Tokmak. Yevhen, you brought your photo archive from there. Maybe I would explain for everybody that Yevhen is that person who was taking photos of almost all events there in Mariupol, but about the military and about any units. How did you manage to do it? Because you realized that it's dangerous and how that it may cost you a lot. Yes, indeed. Indeed, it was dangerous. And indeed, it could cost me a high price. Indeed, I made some efforts to somehow hide some part of my archive. And I left some other part, like if they check me, well, there are these pictures, like some concerts, some people walking around city of Mariupol, nice views of Mariupol and so on. So like seems to be nothing special in those photos. You're welcome to check those. You're welcome to see them. But indeed, when I managed to get to Tokmak, there we already had some light. There is a church in Tokmak at 8 Shevchenko Street where they receive the refugees, displaced persons, and help them. When we entered the church, and for the first time in 2 months, we saw an electrical bulb with light, and there was water on tap, and we washed our hands, and they told us there was a hot shower, you're welcome, and we were given food and water and provided some place to sleep, and it was great. So then you, sorry, I got distracted. So then, as I said, there was light, and there I was able to work with my archive a bit, because if it would be the way it was, it would be worse. So I checked all my archives, all those photos, all those albums which were related in any way to Azov, to the military, and generally to Ukraine, because, you know, even the pictures, any pictures with Ukrainian flag were already not that good to have. Yeah, it turns out you like Ukraine, you have that Ukrainian traditional shirt. No, well, you know, don't you know that Ukraine is not there? That's what you were told at checkpoints. Yes, not only at checkpoints, but that's what we were told in the city, like we were leaving for Zaporizhia. Why are we leaving for Zaporizhia, the enemy said. Now we take Kyiv, then we take Zaporizhia, and in Mariupol everything is quiet. Get back to Mariupol. Of course, they were saying these things. But, as I said, I made some efforts. I somehow reformatted those files. I will not tell you all those details. You don't need it. Yeah, but most important, if somebody is particularly interested, that's information which somebody may need, but I am not to discuss it in public. So I somehow encrypted it. I got that SD card from my camera and hid it. And luckily, again, I will not tell you every detail, but we managed to go through that most terrible last checkpoint where we were inspected very closely and all our chattels were inspected, and we managed to get it almost without any check, any control. So my whole photo archive went through, and all those pictures I took from 2014, 18 now, and even that SD card, and even my films, those negatives when I was made long ago when I had a camera with film. I also brought them with me because our family does not have anything else. Our apartment was burnt. All our archives, all our pictures, all our history, the whole huge library I had, lots of books, all our memories, everything got burned. Not to mention clothes and other things. But in that apartment, we had something which was very difficult to lose, but we lost it. But we managed to save something. As I said on the 20th of March, another shelling started, and it was against our district, against our building. A shell hit one apartment on the 4th floor, and the resident said, "Let's flee because now the whole house will be on fire." And then Kadyrov's people entered the building. I was on the 1st floor, so they entered my apartment among the first ones. They said, "Get out," in swear words. We said, "We have wounded people here. We have a wounded woman who can hardly walk. She was using two poles." And they said, run away, run away. And they didn't even let us to take anything. I had my camera there, my photo archives, prepared a bag with documents and something else. But we thought, okay, if we evacuate, we'll also take something from the cabinet, some clothes, some from that case, we would take some food. We had some food in the basement. As I said, we lived on the 1st floor. But we were not allowed to do anything, to take anything. We were just thrown away from that building, from our apartment. We only took 2 thermoses, 2 flasks with hot water. That was the whole food we had, and that's it. So we left and we went to the neighboring building, to the basement. Other people who had healthy legs went further. Those who had relatives there somewhere, they went to some quieter places, and we just went to the basement in the neighboring building. And thanks to those residents, they said, "Okay, you have this part of the basement. We had people here who left for another part, and you are welcome to stay here." And we stayed there, and in about 1 hour after we entered there, I heard some terrible women's voice in the street. "Why did they leave? Why did they leave?" And she was hysterical. What happened? There was a young boy, Denis Medvedev, that's what I learned later, his name. He went outdoors to see which floor is on fire, because there was an explosion and the building was hit by artillery. And they took keys from those residents who left, so that if there is fire, they would go and extinguish it. So that guy, Denis, went to see which apartment is on fire to go and extinguish it. And when he went outdoors, he was immediately shot by sniper. And he was shot in his temple, and his father went to see his son, and he was shot. His father was shot by the next shot. The mother of that boy remained, the wife of that guy, Andriy, the wife of that young boy remained alive. She's 26 years old. She's like a child herself, and she has a daughter named Carolina, 1 year old. We were living with them in that basement for almost 2 weeks. Their apartment was on the 8th floor of that building, but it was impossible to live there because all the windows were broken. But most importantly, when there is artillery shelling next to you, you cannot live on the 8th floor, and you never know whether this shell or the next one will hit your flat, your apartment. So it was impossible to live there, so that they were spending almost all time with us in the basement. Rarely they would go upstairs to get some Pampers or some food there. And we didn't have any food there, as I said. And When I woke up the next morning, I thought, well, I have to provide food for children. I'll go there. Maybe those Kadyrov people left our flat already. And we had potatoes in the basement and many things like conserves and so on. But as soon as I went around the corner of that building, I saw our building, and you may have seen those pictures. Our whole building was black, and there were just holes instead of windows, nothing else. I even entered the building. When I approached the entrance, right there was a burned body there, lying there. Maybe one of the residents of our house. It was impossible to recognize the person. I entered the flat. There was nothing in the flat, in our apartment. I was asked, like, why your flat is completely empty on photos. Have they taken everything from there? No, nobody got anything from there. It was just burnt, so that nothing remained there. Just naked walls and a thick layer of ash. And even books, I remember, it's in my memory, when I entered the room where we had our library, there were books, and the book seemed intact. There are even some pages, like, the book, it's open, but as soon as you touch it, it becomes ash immediately. I went into the basement. I thought maybe the basement is intact. No, it was also burnt. All those glass was melt. And I went back to the basement and told my wife, our flat is not there anymore. She did not go there after that. She only saw it in our pictures. Even though it was very close to our basement, she said, no, I cannot go and see that flat in which we lived for 20 years. We made it for ourselves. We did all the renovation and repair. We made the furniture there. We made everything to live a good, happy life there. And we were living a good, happy life. We had good jobs. We had good children. We already had a grandchild, but it all disappeared. Not all of it, sorry, our children are safe, our grandchild is safe, our daughter is here in Kyiv, but, the flat is just a flat. But sorry, I'll tell you just a little bit more, because often I am asked, what were you doing, what you were eating, what did you have to eat? I went around that basement, because, as I said, many people left, and I found some half a pack of butter. It was a good thing to find. Then I went outdoors, and there was a balcony, broken balcony, and everything dropped from that balcony, from second floor. And luckily for me, somebody had nuts on that balcony, and all those nuts were now on the ground. I collected all those grounds, all of them. And our first breakfast with children was like this: butter, and then a nut. Butter eaten with a spoon, and nut. They were very lucky with this breakfast. And then I found half a jar of canned meat, and they liked it. And then on the next or third day, I don't remember exactly, we would wake up, and those residents in that building, there were not many of them anymore. Somebody on the first floor and somebody higher, and they brought that hot soup to us, and it was something unimaginable. Then they brought some kasha with some cereals with canned meat. And jumping ahead, after we left for this government-controlled territory of Ukraine, all the time we saw a lot of kind people who were helping us during very difficult times and very difficult situations. And even that woman I mentioned who lost her son and her husband, even that woman found some stamina, some energy to help us. Of course, I was also helping her to make some fire, to boil some water and so on. I would always do it to make some candle, because we didn't have electricity, we didn't have light, and she could not sleep for the whole night because she had a little child. So there should be some candle, and when it would be off, I would fire it again, and she would make soup for herself and for us, and we would eat something. So everybody was helping each other in every way possible. Everybody, well, but not everybody. There were some people who were not so good. By the way, it's about me being a photographer, which you mentioned. In the next block of the building, there was another person. His name was also Yevhen, like me. So that person just told about me to those people from so-called security ministry or something from that so-called Donetsk People's Republic, because those strong guys came and we just left our basement with my wife. We went outdoors, and that neighbor called me, Yevhen, come here, guys want to speak with you. I approached them, and they had good uniform, and they told me, so tell us, correspondent, what sort of pictures did you take here? And I said, I just took some pictures of people. You saw those photos, like people cooking, people finding some solutions in this difficult situation, some self-organization of people and so on. But I said, even pictures I took, they have all been destroyed by fire. I have nothing left. If you don't believe me, you can go to our building and in our basement, and there are 2 cameras burnt. And indeed, I had 2 cameras burnt in our basement because I hid not only food but also the monitor and all those things of some value. I would put them into some basement. Even if there was an explosion, maybe in the basement it would be safer. But everything was burnt. And I told that guy, if you want, we can go there and you would check. And he said, you're lying, but then later, by the way, in Mariupol, I was an actor in a theater. We organized some amateur theater, and maybe I have some acting skills. So finally, he let me alone. But luckily, that other person, that other Yevhen, was beaten so strongly that day that his face became black. Why? Because he just wanted to take a flat, an apartment from his neighbor, and maybe he just tried to look good in the eyes of those people. He betrayed people, he betrayed me, he may have betrayed some other people, and he wanted to earn some trust with those security people from so-called security ministry, people from so-called Donetsk People's Republic. But maybe they had their own ideas, they didn't like it, so they had beaten him. And it was nice for me to see that, he got something for whatever bad things he was doing. And I knew that I have a camera in my basement, I have my whole photo archive in that basement. I thought, if they really go there, bad things may happen. Because, people got problems even in situations where, for example, in the laptop there was a picture like somebody's son is taking oath of allegiance to the Ukrainian army. It was enough, it was sufficient for that person to have problems. And I had sufficient number of things for me to get into problems. So we decided to leave that basement. I want to have some time for our journalists to ask questions. Definitely our journalists would have some questions. Dear colleagues, you're welcome to ask your questions for Yevhen. No more questions? You see, there are no questions. Any more questions? No questions here. Okay, then you're welcome to continue. Yevhen, what would you tell now for those who stay in Mariupol, who are still in Mariupol? You know what? There are different people in Mariupol. There are some people who, when they see the Russian convoy, we saw some old people who'd wave friendly to that Russian convoy. What could I wish to those guys? Okay, continue waving. And there are other people, their building has been completely broken, and they look from their windows and they see a platoon or some unit of those Russian military, and they shout from the window, "Glory to Russia." There were people like that. Or people are sitting in the backyard. For example, in that part of the city where buildings remained almost intact, and they play dominoes, and they have Russian flag above them. What could I wish to such people? But at the same time, there are also people, other people, not a lot of them maybe, but there are other people who dream of getting to this unoccupied part of Ukraine controlled by the government. They dream of it. It's not that easy to do it, to get here. We also had to go through a lot of things, and we didn't manage to move here from first attempt. Also, there is that filtration, that screen now, when not only fingerprints are taken, but they scan the whole biography, that whole story of that person. They scan it on the internet. For example, if you type on the internet Yevhen Sosnovsky Mariupol, well, you would immediately see my whole story. And one would immediately understand everything about my background. My children immediately closed my Facebook profile. I provided them with a password, and my son told somebody, please remove that article on the internet and so on. But if they would like to be picky, they would be very picky. And those who fail to pass that filtration, they are sent to some camps or whatever you call it. They are sent to certain places, and nobody knows what will happen to those people. And they find all reasons to bitch about. For example, we had a neighbor, 72 years old. He had his building was in Eastern District, and he moved to a private building near us, behind the fence. And one day he decided to go and see whether his apartment building is still there. He found the driver and he went there. And some point the driver comes back, but alone, and brings some things, that person's chattels. It turned out that that person was arrested, was detained for the only reason. He had some backpack in camo colors with a black, with a blue stripe on it. And we don't know what happened to that old guy after he was detained. We don't know. What could I wish to those who are still there and who want to live? Of course, I can only wish them that they manage to live like we managed to do it. Yes, it is difficult, but if you just stay there, if you don't make efforts, you will not be able to live. Nobody will come home and visit you. You have to try. You have to make small steps. We would do it this way. We would reach one place and then another place, and finally we managed to live. Even though we had that old granny with us in a wheelchair, still we left, and we reached our goal. When we passed the last checkpoint, I didn't even know for sure whether that was the last checkpoint or not. I asked the driver, will there be any more checkpoints? The driver said, I don't know, they change everything, something every day. But then we saw that there was a tall tower and there was a Ukrainian flag on it. And then I realized that that's it. We have done it. And when we saw a Ukrainian checkpoint and our guy standing there, it's completely different faces. They enter the bus. They speak differently. There is completely different atmosphere. There is completely different world. And I couldn't but refrain from hugging that boy. Although, you know, if you would be brought outdoors and we would have to lay down on the ground, I would kiss that ground, that Ukrainian ground, that asphalt. Honestly, that's what I would be doing. There was a little boy sitting in front of me with his mother, and he said, "Mom, look." He waved me, and indeed our military guy waved friendly to that little guy, and that little guy, it was he felt great about it. You know, I don't even know how to describe it, how to express it. As I said, you know, we were in hell first. I didn't tell you all the details. There are lots of things to tell. And better if nobody among you and your relatives, and generally nobody, nobody would see it. It would not happen in no other city of Ukraine and worldwide, because that's terrible. That's terrible. When they come, when they say we came to liberate the city, you know, they don't say we take it. They say we liberate it. They are like liberators, those Russians. They have liberated us from everything. They have liberated us from our life, from whatever we had. But we will live on. We will restore Ukraine. I don't know whether we will be able to return to Mariupol. To be honest, I don't know, because that Mariupol I loved. That Mariupol I kept taking pictures of, that beautiful city with sea and everything. It's not there anymore. Whether it will be possible to restore, to rebuild it, I don't know. I think they have killed something in Mariupol, something which cannot be restored. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe it will happen. Maybe it will be even better. Maybe there will be a European beautiful city, because I'm sure that they will be thrown away from Mariupol sooner or later. It will definitely happen, and the city will be restored. But again, I will repeat, whether I am to repeat there, I don't know. Yevhen, thank you very much for coming here. Thank you for your story. When we were preparing for this meeting with you, I watched one of your interviews. There you said that you have lost your photo albums, your books with your photos. Maybe, you know, it just had to happen this way. I had this book with me and I want you to have it. Thank you. Thank you, sincerely, thank you. Thank you, dear friends. Thank you. Stay with us. We had